Thank you for accepting talking to Kosev. It's been your first visit after the assassination of a designated Serbian political leader, Mr. Oliver Ivanovic. The embassy reacted immediately after this tragic event. You strongly condemned it, and you are spending the day all day long here in the North Mitrovica.
Mm-hmm.
Who did you meet, and what is the situation like?
Okay, well, first of all, thank you very much for having me with you today. I really appreciate it. We have been around several places in town. I've got another couple of places to go. I think we started off at the court, the new court, to meet the Chief Judge Kovacic, who is doing an incredible job trying to put the rule of law pieces back together for the North, and I really respect him and all of his colleagues at the court for, really restarting the court and the prosecution in the North. I think it's a terrific effort. It's probably a bit harder than everybody expected, but I've been really impressed at what they're doing. I walked by the construction site of the bridge. It looks like things are moving again, which is great. I hope that project is finished as soon as possible. It looks like there's not much more to do. And certainly I think we'll all be happier when the people can walk and drive across the bridge like it was always intended. I saw the mayor, Mayor Rakic. Had a good conversation with him about his priorities for the city, and in his role as leader of the Srpska list as well. Talked with some civil society members, and so I'm talking with you right now, and then we're going to go see a USAID project at a bakery a little bit later. So it's a full day, but it's a good day.
It's a good day. Do you think this good day actually the situation is promising after the murder, or you see the difference?
I think life is continuing, which is good. I think it's become clear that the tragic murder of Mr. Ivanovic was not necessarily an inter-ethnic incident. We don't know who, of course. We don't really have any facts yet about the homicide. But I think the fact that people are not blaming other communities for this is very positive. And I would like to interpret that as being part of the gradual improvement in intercommunal relations between Kosovo Serbs and Kosovo Albanians.
Mr. Delavi, Oliver Ivanovic had been exposed to the most brutal verbal attacks during this short time of his political activism after he was released from the court. His private property was also destroyed during the local elections. So were other Kosovo Serbian opposition candidates. While the Queen countries took a very strong vocal approach during the extraordinary parliament vote back last June, this was not the case for the local Kosovo election. It remained mostly silent. Why did it happen so?
Well, I think I've got to disagree with you a bit there. We issued a Quinn statement in September regarding intimidation leading up to the local elections. I gave an interview with Radio Kim. I think it was in October, where I condemned the interference and the intimidation in the elections. So, I think we have been pretty vocal about interference in what should be a fundamentally democratic process, the election of local officials. Certainly, the EU observation mission that was here during the local elections talked about the problem of interference in the elections. I thought they had a very good statement after that. I have to say we heard stories of various types of intimidations, economic and other intimidation. I was disappointed that there weren't more candidates in the election. I think 30 years after the fall of the Berlin Wall, we shouldn't really be seeing single candidate elections in a democratic country. So, there are things that have to be worked on here. If I haven't said enough about intimidation, then I'll talk more about it, because if you don't have people who feel that they can run for office, no matter what their political views are, no matter who they're related to or tied to, then you have to call into question the democracy. We want everybody to be able to compete for elected office, whether it's on the local level, from the national level, who wants to run. And then let the voters decide. It's not for governments to decide who should be able to run for office. It's for the voters to decide who they want to represent them.
I was referring more to the Queen countries, not to this EU monitoring mission from Brussels, but I get the point. It was another thing that steered that much attention was that only after the murder, the information that was released from the State Department it was actually on 12th of January, just 4 days before the murder, and then also from Germany and other information about the traveling guideline to the US citizens, recommending how it was specified, increased attention to those traveling to Kosovo, including the north of Kosovo. This information hit the major attention by Belgrade media, and after the murder, there were lots of not only speculation, but there was a very clear question raised in public. Was there any ground for that? Was the State Department aware, if not about the assassination itself, but about some possible particular threat?
Okay, yeah, unfortunately there's been a lot of misinformation about this. If you look at the State Department website, you'll see that the travel advisory for every country in the world was changed on that day. So it was not just Kosovo, it was every country in the world, and it was just a computer website refresh. So that's point one. Point two, we've looked back at the travel advisories for the last year, basically, for Kosovo, including the north, and they're all basically substantively the same. There are a couple of words different here and there, but substance, they were the same both before and after that day, the 12th. So unfortunately, what was basically an internal State Department kind of computer website update got misinterpreted as signaling that we had information, or at least renewed concerns about security here. Now, of course, we're concerned about security in the north, and I think a lot of the North citizens are concerned about that as well. But as far as that day or any specific information goes, that was purely a computer thing, and we had no new information. And if you look, you can see there's no really any new information between before the 12th and after the 12th.
Thank you. There will be almost 2 months of the investigation that is ongoing in regard to the assassination. And if you are analyzing how, from the public perspective, how the whole information goes so far in public, it's back and forth accusation between Belgrade and between Pristina, and in spite of some very strong and vocal statements from political leaders on both of the sides. Is that a surprise to you, that it's really not some kind of clear, tangible result presented in public so far? And are you concerned about the rule of law generally in Kosovo and in the north of Kosovo? When I say a rule of law, I also think of the efficient policing.
Okay, well, I have to say American television has probably given us all the idea that you can solve any crime within an hour. And unfortunately, that's not the case in the real world. So it strikes me that the police are looking at this case seriously. There's a Kosovo Serb and a Kosovo Albanian prosecutor who are kind of leading the investigation, which is good to have someone from each community here. And I wish they had an answer already too, but in the real world, especially for a homicide, sometimes it takes a while to figure things out. So I do not have the indication that people are being lazy or slacking off. I think this is a hard case. There's different types of evidence they have to evaluate. And I hope they will get to the right result. Certainly there's been some cooperation between Serbian and Kosovar police departments. Maybe it took a little while to get kicked off the ground, but there seems to be some, which is positive, because it's certainly possible there's evidence in both countries that could help lead to a solution to the problem. So we're doing what we can to support the police, the prosecutors with training and things like that. If I could solve this crime, I would. I tell the police. I don't have any evidence, unfortunately. To the next part of your question, am I concerned about rule of law? Absolutely. It's the number one topic for my embassy in Kosovo. I talk about it almost every day. And rule of law is one of those things that, it's not one of those things, it's kind of the thing. If you don't have rule of law, then economics and reconciliation and things like that become very, very difficult. So you have to have rule of law. And there's a ways to go in Kosovo. There's a ways to go in the north. I was very glad to see German Foreign Minister Gabriel here about 2 weeks ago talking about the rule of law challenges here. I think the more it's talked about, the better, because it's the citizens ultimately who, through pressure on politicians, are going to lead to improvements in the rule of law. We can do a lot of training, and we do. We spend millions of dollars a year training police and prosecutors and things like that. But what it really takes is the citizens to say, I'm just sick of this. I don't want my children to be around drug dealers, or I don't want bad things to happen. And they can pressure the politicians and the police to do a better job. And they should. It's their right.
This is exactly what you said, that you said one sentence that the more you talk about that, it's better about. This is exactly what local public makes an objection, that there is too much talk and very few results, and that the case of Oliver Ivanovic, an investigation would be the results, a clear, concrete result would be a concrete result of the efficiency of the rule of law and successful policing in Kosovo, and especially that what would be your comment that a significant portion of public thinks that it's not that difficult case for the investigation. In regard to what Mr. Oliver Ivanovic was warning, alerting months ahead of the assassination, and very small place where literally everyone knows everything.
Well, if people really have evidence or facts, they should tell the police. I know people think it should be solved by now. In an ideal world, of course it would, but in fact, complicated cases sometimes take a long time to resolve.
The demarcation case.
Yes.
Just before you took your trip to Mitrovica, you tweeted and you put a message that ratification is closer than ever, expecting the demarcation agreement between Kosovo and Montenegro to be ratified this week. However, last week you tweeted again about very optimistic expectation for the case, and you also reminded the public of the tweet you posted in August 2015, when you also had a very successful and very optimistic message. So we are now the fourth year ahead of that. How sure you are that a demarcation agreement will be ratified this week? And if to be so, would you rather expect to be voted with the votes of Srpska Lista or Vetvendosie?
Well, I plead guilty to being an optimist, okay? You shouldn't go into the diplomacy business if you're not an optimist. But I think it's a fact that we've never been closer than we are today to a positive vote in the Assembly, 80 or more votes in favor of this demarcation agreement. So I'm going to be optimistic and say I think it could actually be voted positively this week, and that would be great. Certainly, it is in the interest of all of Kosovo's citizens that this agreement be ratified as soon as possible. Whether you're a Kosovo Serb or a Kosovo Albanian or Gorani or Roma or whatever, this is in the interest of every community here, that this be passed. The European Union High Rep Mogherini said a couple of years ago when she was here that the vote on the border would unlock the visa liberalization for Kosovo. So I think this issue has really sucked up a lot of the political oxygen in Kosovo the last couple of years and has prevented other important things from being done because everyone's consumed with this issue. The Assembly can vote it, approve it, and then that will give the members of Parliament an opportunity to go on to other things that are important to Kosovo citizens, like rule of law, like education, like healthcare, that are very significant. Now, I would love it if it were approved by all MPs from all parties, if everybody voted for it.
Will it happen so?
Your crystal ball may be better than mine. I hope so. That's all I can say.
There is a significant portion within the Serbian public and concern is particularly about this demarcation agreement, and there are some voices, both political and expert voices within Serbian public saying that this would not be internationally legal border between Kosovo and Montenegro, like between Montenegro and Serbia. So do you see any difference between the border between Kosovo and Montenegro in terms that this is not an internationally recognized border like the countries within former Yugoslavia, and that the border between those countries, former republics, were certified by the UN?
The United States government's position on this issue is clear. Kosovo is a sovereign, independent state. We recognized that sovereignty and independence in 2008, and we feel that Kosovo should be able to engage in international agreements with foreign partners on the same basis of any other sovereign, independent state. So certainly I would view that the border agreement between Kosovo and Montenegro as being a sovereign agreement between those two nations. And both nations, in my view, are perfectly capable, able, and legally justified in defining that border.
Would it need an extra recognition from the UN?
I believe, I'm not a lawyer, I believe as long as both countries agree that it becomes valid for those countries, and those are the countries that matter.
About the demo, you said that with the demarcation many things would be moved. So this is actually the last question. Currently there are two ongoing, very simplified narratives, both in Belgrade public and Prištini public, also in Serbian public. Speaking of Belgrade, they say that if the normalization agreement is signed, Serbia will be accepted within the EU. In Pristina, if the demarcation agreement is passed, ratified, Kosovo will get free, actually, visa liberalization. Both political leadership and media somehow, on purpose or without purpose, accidentally, they dropped the criteria of fight against crime and corruption. Are they right? Are really those two only criteria for having Serbia in Europe or having visa liberalization in Pristina, just with the demarcation and the binding agreement? What about corruption and crime?
Well, if you want an EU opinion, you've got to ask an EU official, which is not me. But I can tell you that crime and corruption in Kosovo are the defining issues for this country. Kosovo's got to work on it. It's got to work harder. We are trying to help, and we have seen some progress. The Transparency International ranking on corruption for Kosovo has improved a couple of points from last year. That's positive. The World Bank ranking on corruption has improved a couple of points from the year before. But there's got to be more work, there's got to be more seriousness, and there's got to be more commitment by the rule of law institutions and by the politicians to get things done. And this is just vital. It's what the Kosovo citizens want from all the communities. If you look at any public opinion poll, 70% of the people say the biggest problem in Kosovo is corruption. I think this is a big issue that has to be dealt with. Of course, Kosovo's not alone in this. There are other countries that have this challenge as well. But Kosovo's got to work harder on this issue. Everyone in the rule of law sector has to work, and Kosovo citizens have to keep making their opinion known. Because I think we see, increasingly in Kosovo as in other countries, that what the citizens want, they ultimately get. They don't get it as fast as they want, but they will get it.
The very last question. What is your message to the people of Mitrovica here, from Mitrovica, or people in the north of Kosovo?
Okay, well, thank you. I want to say how important it is to my country, to my embassy, that Kosovo Serbs feel at home in Kosovo. And that we spend a lot of time and effort trying to improve the lives of regular people. And we know there are challenges. But we're going to keep working on challenges like language law, implementation of language law, justice integration, to support the rule of law sector, the diploma recognition, bilateral diploma recognition, so it's easier to get civil service jobs across the country, and certainly a minority employment issue. So we want to ensure that Kosovo Serbs can see their future in Kosovo, recognizing the challenges. We're going to do our best to help them overcome the challenges, help the whole country overcome these challenges, so that everybody who wants to live here can feel at home here.
Thank you for talking to Kosovo.
You're welcome.